Report.
This is Jason J. Lewis, the voice of Superman on Justice League Action.
This is Mark Waid, writer of Superman Birthright.
And you're listening to The Krypton Report.
And you're listening to Krypton Report.
Up in the sky, look!
It's a bird.
It's a plane! It's the Krypton Report!
The All Things Kryptonian podcast, including Superman and Supergirl.
We discuss games, movies, cartoons, TV shows, and comics.
Find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter. Welcome to the Krypton Report. Hey, hold on. Say it. Ready?
Why don't go to Krypton Report? It's me, Solomon.
Well, hi, Solomon. You know who else is here with me and Solomon? In the background of the cave, in the quiet stillness of the night, you can hear Brian Peters. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Solomon. Hey, Tyler. Hey, James.
Yes, and James, I am here.
And James, the quarantine man with the Bane jacket, who was going to tell us all that living in the mask is a good thing.
My back.
And
I will break you.
How's it going, boys?
Oh, it's
crazy,
going
mad. Going mad.
So for
gonna blow something up.
Mm-hmm.
The streets will run with Razzie Zazzy.
So today we're gonna travel back to the farthest that we've ever gone back in our Superman watching. Can't go back any farther than we did reading, but we're gonna discuss the first episode of the Superman serials starring Kirk Alyn as Superman, who in some ways is the forgotten Superman. And we're going to discuss the first episode of the Max Fleischer cartoon series. So, without further ado, let's take a trip back. Which one would you boys like to do first?
We can do the cereal first.
I say cereal.
I got it going on in the background here.
All right, so the Superman serial, starring Kirk Alyn as Superman, premiered in 1948. 1948, with the first episode called Superman Comes to Earth, clocking in at 21 minutes. Now, I'll tell you right now, what I find interesting about this episode is how much the beats of this episode feel like the pilot of The Adventures of Superman.
They definitely took a lot of elements in Adventures of Superman from this. Absolutely.
I mean, we got Eben and Sarah again.
They save the baby and the rocket explodes. So there's no traces.
We have a long opening scene on Krypton with a voiceover in the solar system. We get... What's sad is this episode it's interesting, but
the guys on Krypton here, they look like they're wearing drapes for cloaks.
Yes, literally just grabbed them.
I was just gonna say that. It's like
I just pulled them down.
It's like they stole the drapes from my grandma's house and just threw them on them.
From your great grandma's house.
And they're all angry. Let's not forget, they're all
God
angry.
rest their soul.
Jarrell, what are you doing? The planet is fine. Oh, we got some interesting.
Well,
names
they're upset. They're upset because they don't have any backs to their chairs. They're just sitting on benches, and you got one guy in the triangle chair.
And you know what bugs me about this is we get so much on Krypton, and then we get very quickly. Do we get the Earth scenes? And then it's the end of the serial. It's the end of the episode. Much like how much how we were teased George in the Adventures of Superman pilot, we are teased Superman here just as much. What do you guys think?
Well, I think that baby looks absolutely terrified going into that rocket there. That's for sure. Yeah, and if I'm trying to remember, like, because it's been a while since I watched this episode. Like, doesn't it just end with him turning into Superman for the first time?
So, yes. So
I'm
looking
trying to
at the
remember.
episode, okay, we have a very basic Krypton. I mean, it's fun to watch just the rear projection, the giant rocket. So it is a 21-minute episode, and at 10 minutes and 20 seconds, here comes Eben and Sarah finding the rocket. And the rocket is beautifully drawn in animation. As it escapes,
They do a
Krypton.
good job with like miniatures as they as Krypton is crumbling.
It's
Like the dam collapsing and the buildings and the houses and stuff like collapsing in on themselves. Like you can tell they're miniatures, but they did a good job with them.
But that, like, one thing that I thought was kind of somewhat cool about this serial is that mixing of animation with live action. Because I mean, some parts it does look ridiculous, but some parts it just makes you chuckle a little bit. Like, it makes it a little bit more fun, especially when that rocket crashes and when Superman goes off in the burning building later on.
Right. That's the special. That's the special effects. That's the real special effects right there.
Yeah.
You're darn right, man. No green
in.
screen at all.
Just drawn right over the frame.
Can't do that CGI. You can't.
I mean, I like how Pa Kent here is rocking a mustache.
And a suit. Doesn't quite look like a farmer.
Well, wasn't it like they were supposed to be driving home from church or something, like one of the earlier stories? It was something like that because
Sunday church.
They had their. Or was that just in Superman the movie?
Looks like the close-ups of the baby are just like close-ups of a baby. When they're actually holding the baby, it looks like a doll wrapped up. It's not moving. It's not doing anything.
Well, when he takes Clark out of the ship, like that baby's stiff as a board. I mean,
yeah.
like he's.
And so is it when he hands it over to Sarah.
Well, here's my favorite.
Yeah.
Okay,
You must be.
is when we find the baby. Okay, and then we get this little montage of baby Clark, pulling a cart. Like, we're talking like toddler Clark pulling a cart as chores. And then we have him looking in the haystack using his X-ray vision. And comes out with a needle. Or her watch. Couldn't remember. It's her watch. She left in the haystack. So we get some nice little young Clarks. But this set of like the inside of the house looks almost identical, if not to the Adventures of Superman house set. Like, it's
probably the exact same set.
And then here,
that little clip. I don't know. I think James is watching in the background, and he's where I am. I'm seeing him look through the haystack right now. But that little image of that kid pulling that cart, man, hilarious.
Yeah.
Him diving in the hay bale, fantastic.
I like that there's 3 different versions of Clark. And then we have the classic tornado, which is beautifully drawn by animation here. That's showing up. Good old Paul getting in his car as Clark boy is running. But it's funny, we have baby, then like toddler, then boy, now I have like teenager, and we're at 14 minutes.
You get five versions in one episode. Wow. I didn't even think about that.
It's just like boom, 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 boom. Oh no, Paul. Power line's down. But it's an interesting introduction. And then we have the power line scene. And then it's like a hard cut almost into him being a man. I find it interesting just how much things change from a storytelling point of view. Because there's no reason given why Clark would wear glasses. But all of a sudden, adult Clark has glasses on. So,
interesting. Yeah, I find it
Clark had
very,
reached
very
manhood.
interesting.
The Kents decided to have a talk with him. I love the overarching narrator to this. So we're at 15 minutes, and we first got our first look at Kirk Allen. In his nice suit.
Oh,
right. Suit from the 1940s.
They're having to talk with him about, you're different from other people. You came from another planet. You're a man now, and I'm sure you've noticed these things, these changes.
Right. You've been pulling hay carts since you were 2 years old.
We've had you working as a workhorse on this farm. That's why we're so profitable, because we didn't have to pay for help and labor.
Right. You've done the work of 20 men.
I must use my powers wisely in justice. The world needs this, man. You must leave this farm.
Well, they instilled something in him over the years.
When I leave, I'll get a job that'll keep me close to the world events. That way, when anything happens, I'll know about it. Here's a uniform I made for
and
you.
maybe I'll start smoking a pipe like you, Paul.
The interesting thing, though, the narrator, and shortly after, both Kent parents passed away.
That's what I was getting to. I mean, it was just like, boom, right here, hard cut. Shortly after this, Clark's foster parents passed away. Both of them?
Yeah.
Remembering their last wishes.
It's like the Notebook. They fell asleep in each other's arms.
Maybe. I mean, I remember I was watching this and I was just like, holy cow. Like, they gave him the speech, and I mean, how shortly after this, he's wearing the same outfit.
We're going to go take a nap, Clark, and then never wake up.
Now, we do get our first intro to Miss Lois Lane, played by Noelle Neal, who would later go on to replace Phyllis Coates on the George Reeves series. So, it's our first live-action Lois Lane. And I like her as Lois. There's only ever been one bad Lois Lane, fellas.
Yeah. She was just too young, dude. She was like 20 years old when she was doing that.
She was too young, did not look the part, inexperienced, and just sucked. Clark hears a whistle and looks down at the tracks. Track is bent.
Like Lois, though, Jimmy's like, I'm going to go take a picture of, she can wait. She knew exactly what he was going to do.
Oh, yeah.
I just love the people running. Trains coming.
Stop thinking with your head and do this.
I think Noelle is one of the best Loises, in my opinion. I really do.
I agree. All right, we're at 19 minutes, boys. Here comes the train, barely. I mean, they got to end on suspension, right? The guy's running down the tracks, trying to wave it down. He's not going to make it, says Clark.
The rail is broken.
Train whistling. Clark looks up. This looks like a job for Superman.
That was some right. That was some serious. That was something serious to bend a train rail like that.
Then he runs behind a bush, comes running out, leaps over the rails, starts to push it back, and cut. Can even Superman save the day? What will happen when Clark Kent arrives in Metropolis? And I'm just like, man, like I understand the nature of the serials, but much like the first episode of the George Reeves Adventures of Superman, you really didn't give me anything.
Well, at least the George Reeves' Adventures was it was designed to be episodic. So the first episode had an actual ending to it, whereas this, designed as a serial, it was designed for people to come back over and over to see the next part. So it was kind of like a long movie type thing. They leave you on a cliffhanger, so you want to come back and see the next chapter of the story.
But wouldn't they play this like in the local Nickelodeon in the 40s? Like people would be going to see like a major picture, and then this would play before it, and then that would keep people going to the theater to see movies every week. Like,
right, you'd see this, you'd see a newsreel, yeah, you'd see stuff like that.
Yeah, that's precisely why it always left on a cliffhanger. Absolutely,
you'd get short from like the Three Stooges. And
heck yeah, man.
But I mean,
like it was a thing when you'd get a whole bunch of stuff. You get a newsreel, you get Three Stooges shorts, you'd get Superman serial, and you'd get a movie or something.
And that's why the movie theater is the best way to watch things.
Do you know how old Kirk Allen was when he made his debut as Superman?
I do not.
Take a guess.
65.
Take a real guess.
42.
35.
He's 37.
37, wow.
Same age that George Reeves was as well.
Really?
Interesting, wow.
Do you boys know how old Chris was when he debuted as Superman?
It's like 24.
Yeah.
27.
He was like 24.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure at least when he started filming, he was 24. And because it was about the same for Brandon Routh, too. He was right around the same age as well. Henry Cavill was a couple of years older, like 27.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, that's the one I messed up. How old was Dean? Dean was in his late 20s, wasn't he? Or was Dean in early 30s?
24 when he was cast in Superman the movie. So that was Christopher Reeve. So just interesting to think about, like, because we always think of the idea that Superman appearing like his 30s, it's just an interesting kind of like how he was. But yeah,
I don't know. I've always kind of liked Superman starting when he's about 30 years old. Same with Batman. I've always kind of liked that. Like experience the world a little bit more before you just go in there and start like saving it.
Dean Cain was about let's see. He was about 26. So, interesting, huh?
Yes, it is.
But so I like the Kirk Allen serial, and it's just one of those, like, we're reviewing the first episode, and it's just like it just leaves so much more to be desired, you know. Because it's like you just teased this at the end.
Yeah, I mean, you don't even see Metropolis until 3 minutes and 45 seconds in the second serial. Like things don't start cooking till like really the end of the first episode. So maybe you gotta review it as a whole serial, one big giant movie, I guess.
And I mean,
It's hard to review just one episode.
Yeah, it is. It's also kind of hard, I think, to break it down and do, because each set of serials, like so many serials would do like one storyline. So we'll have to like try to finish out a whole arc. But it's just interesting to kind of go back and look at just that one snippet. Like, if that is what you first saw, would you want to continue watching?
I think that's a really tough question, because like I think, and we've had this discussion, a good many times, like, Superman and all comic characters, they kind of have to change with the times. So if you're asking, like, does this hold up for somebody watching Superman for the first time? I don't know. Depends what else they've seen. It depends how old they are and what else they've seen. Because if you were to see, Spider-Man now, or Avengers now, or Dark Knight, Nolan, and then you never saw Superman before, and then you saw this, you might be like, I'm not impressed. So
For today's audience, it's too. It takes a little too long to get to
right.
Superman, and then, I mean, if you're not going to watch at least a few of them just to see one of them, and you only get Superman for the last minute and a half, not even, you get Superman for the less than a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if that's all they see, that's not really. Most people are going to be like, okay, well, like, I'm done with this, unless they watch the first few and they get a little more. I haven't watched past one. I saw the very beginning of two, but I didn't continue forward with it at the time.
I've seen them before. It's been a long time, but I didn't do them yet for this rewatch, just because I wanted to just focus on this and not carry in anything from the other one.
Exactly. So, it doesn't give much of Superman. It does go by a brisk pace. So with it being 21 minutes and just, beat to beat to beat, I mean,
they just spend a lot of time on Krypton.
Yeah.
They really do.
I mean, it's the first time you see a live action Krypton and stuff like that, and the idea that Krypton is going to be destroyed, and why Krypton's going to be destroyed, kind of giving a reason except for just, Krypton explodes and baby Kal-El was sent off planet. Like, that's all you got, but pretty much before then,
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the first explanation that they gave for the destruction of Krypton, what happened, and so I mean, it's expanding the world of Superman. I mean, for today's audiences, it probably wouldn't hold. If you're like us and you're a bit of a completionist and you want to go back and see some of the early stuff, just even watch it once.
I think you should. I mean, I think if you...
Yeah.
I've watched them. It's been a long time, and I don't remember all of it. Because I used to watch the George Reeves Adventures of Superman series with my grandparents, on and off when it was on, like, Nick at Night or whatever it came on. I haven't sat down and watched it straight like I should have. I've watched... I've watched most of it, but I think if you're a fan, you need to at least see it at least once, just to kind of like remember where you came from, type thing.
Right.
I think that mostly I think most of the serial and Adventures of Superman, kind of the older stuff is for that more serious fan that wants to look at that history of Superman, that wants to see that old stuff, wants to see that golden age, how things came to be. I don't know if I would use it as a starting point, for new fans that are like, hey, let me see something Superman. I've been watching Marvel forever, and let me see Superman. I don't know if it holds up to be a good launching pad for the new fans. But us historians, us completionists, us, hardcore Superman fans, it was really good to watch. Like when DC Universe launched, I watched this right away, with the George Reeves, Adventures of Superman show, just because it's something that I never got to watch too much, and I couldn't remember much of the Adventures of Superman from being a kid. But what I will say is that the serials, the action and suspense, it does flow pretty good because it's like a continuous movie and it has those cliffhangers. But the Adventures of Superman, at least to me, I don't know. I kind of really like those classic Superman villains. I like seeing Lex Luthor, and I like seeing maybe a Metallo every once in a while or something. And Adventures of Superman, it takes a while to build up certain things, and it's like seeing a super powered man that can do anything. We're going to go and find some guy that's robbing a jewelry store or something. It's not that there's anything wrong with Golden Age Superman. It's just
I'm on the opposite of that in a way, because I like some of the Adventures of Superman stuff about, well, what would Superman do playing a role when he could just do everything in these very normal, average, everyday situations. But we all got to look at, the powers of like what Superman. You couldn't say drop Henry Cavill Superman in, like the Adventures of Superman show. Like that would just be too much power. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it just kind of goes by the time frame of what the character is capable of. And like you said, I feel like these serials are great. They're great for like, I met a lady at the Dollar Tree one day. I had a Superman t-shirt on, go figure, like I do all the time.
What? You wear a Superman shirt? No.
And she started talking to me, Solomon was with me, about how she grew up watching the George Reeves series. And it was just kind of cool because, she asked me if I had ever seen it or knew about it. And, we just kind of sat there and talked. And I was like, yeah. And it's kind of interesting, like it made her happy and brought things up. And it was kind of sad that she would just assume that I would have never have watched these, as a fan. But that's what you run into a lot of times with things. So,
isn't that just wonderful that like you just wearing a Superman shirt gets you to talk about something that you love and you're passionate about just with other people, and as you talk to different fans, being the geeks that we are, it is nice to just like, George Reeves' Superman was my favorite, or Christopher Reeves' Superman was my favorite. Like, everybody has their own favorites. They have their own genre that they love the most. And it brings us more together as Superman fan community.
It can. And what's funny, it can
I love
to
that.
the people who just idolize Chris so much that nothing can beat him or ever will be. And they take out joys of fandom because they only want this one thing, and that can be really sad.
Yeah, the problem with that is, there's only one Chris, so why are you trying to make other people like him?
Yeah.
His stuff's not going anywhere. If you don't enjoy something different, a different take, then you don't have to see it. I mean, you should give it a chance, but
there is
it's not good, and it's other people aren't going to enjoy it.
There is a small group of people out there. I'm talking like hard to find people whose first Superman was the Superboy TV series. Like for us,
I was too young for that, really. I mean, my first Superman was the Fleischer cartoons,
because
quite possibly Chris Reeve, but Dean Cain.
Yeah, for our generation, it's either Chris or Dean Cain, because the movies were out, but they, harder to find on home video, like we've talked about before on here. My recollection of Superman the movie was Superman the movie and Superman 2, because my mom had them taped from TV together, and I didn't know they were the two different ones. Of course, I wore down the VHS, and she never bothered to get another copy of it. So, a lot of my Superman came from Dean Cain until, we were able to actually get our own copies. And then I had the VHS, which I still have hanging out here in the Cave of Solitude. My 2 VHS copies of the Fleischer cartoons that I got for my birthday as a child. And I want to say it was around my 4th or 5th birthday, because it was the same time frame. I remember getting that for my birthday, and then my uncle and my dad watching Batman '89 on home release, because I just remember the Warner Brothers ball cap commercial, as many of us do.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
You can't watch a Warner Brothers movie without a Warner Brothers ball cap.
So that stuck out to me more than the movie did as a child.
Yeah.
So, without further
the Fleischer cartoons, when I had them, it was like it was on like a cartoon, a VHS with like multiple cartoons of the day. Like, I remember it had
mine too.
Fleischer cartoon. It had Superman, and it had some Casper ones and stuff.
So So we're going to segue into our series. So the Fleischer cartoon series, first of all, was a big deal for the studio in itself, because it was a higher end. Like you just said, they were known for making like Betty Boop, and
Popeye, I think.
I think so as well. Like type of cartoon series, and they went in and did a process called rotoscoping, where basically they would have actors and stuff come in, and then they would animate over top of these actors. And it was a very expensive process. But it paid off. I mean, these things, the legacy of these are, excuse me. So this is 1941. These things are still amazingly beautiful to watch now.
Oh, the animation is spectacular. This animation looks so much better than anything that came out in the 60s and the 70s with like the Superman and Batman and the Super Friends. Like,
well,
animation 30 years later, it's just appalling compared to this.
Well, they put in a lot of detail into this animation. To make it, because this was going to be like a big deal for Superman. And the other thing is, those cartoons, like the Hanna-Barbera and the Filmation especially Filmation, they did a thing where they would reuse the cells. So if you would watch, they would only like animate like the head for different things. So they didn't have to really animate the whole body. So the body would be stuck in one spot where the head would be the one part moving or something like that to try to keep it on the cheap.
Yeah.
And these were expensively done. I mean, I watched it. So you were talking about an introduction to these. And if anyone's listened to my podcast recently where I talked with Morgan Seibert, the co-owner of the Superman Museum, an operator, she talked about her introduction was these cartoons to Superman and how much they're lasting for her. So I watched this with Solomon and Selah, and they sat and they watched it with me. So we just watched the Superman cartoon. What'd you think?
That was awesome. Papa's mommy was little.
Yeah, she was 5 when this came out. Your great-grandmother was 5 when this came out. So what'd you think of it, Selah?
Good.
Yeah? What'd you like about it?
I like it. I like when Superman turned and defeat Dr. Evil.
The evil scientist?
Yeah, the evil scientist. And it had clown face on. It had clown face on.
Yeah?
He didn't have a clown face, Selah. Yeah.
You think he had a clown face? Uh-huh. What'd you think about his creepy bird?
That was funny.
Yeah?
And I really want to watch it again.
You want to watch it again?
Yeah. It was a really cool show. But Superman, like, the electronic, do you know what happened? Why they destroyed
Yeah.
Superman's the evil scientist lab?
Yeah. So, do you want to watch the next one?
Yeah. Yeah, and we record that too, Daddy.
All right, let's watch the next one, guys. They wanted to watch the next one because they were interested in it. And I mean, that says something to these 10-minute short cartoons that don't have a lot of dialogue in them, but are just so engaging in the way they look. I mean, you know, it's been documented that Batman the Animated Series was inspired by these, and especially the opening scene, the credits, Batman's first night out, is highly stylized like these. And this, you know, so the Fleischer cartoon series premiered in 1941 and carries over, what do you call it? The voice cast from the radio drama.
Yeah.
And so we have Bud Collyer returning to voice Clark Kent / Superman. And we get the great, you know, intro of, this looks like a job for Superman.
Yeah, the voice drop and everything.
And
Man, I what a great opening. Like, well, I mean, that's what hooked me as a kid. That faster than speeding bullets.
more powerful than a locomotive.
The locomotive. Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Superman. I mean, gosh, man, I love it.
And
I wish they would still use it today.
What's interesting is if you watch this, it has that opening narration, and that same, not the exact same, but like a very similar kind of summary narration is used in both how we just described the serials, having a narrator open up the story, but also the what do you call it? The Adventures of Superman. And how it kind of tells the story of who this is, what their job is, what their mission is, and it's just kind of synergistic of how these three really represent the character. Because these were if you think about it, these were the three that existed in a pocket of time before we get to, like the Super Friends and that kind of thing. When things change.
Yeah, they changed pretty hard at that time too. I mean, it's the Silver Age of comics, and comics have been through so many things, the creation of the Comics Code Authority, and they were taken from the serious content they had in the Golden Age to just adventurous children's books for years and years.
Yeah, I mean, you're right.
Just the way that the Fleischer cartoons are done, I mean, they take Superman seriously. He was serious at the time. The character, he dealt with serious issues of the time, the mob and corruption and domestic violence and things like that,
which are things I love seeing Superman tackle. It's something organic with the character and where he came from the creating point of view. But okay, so we're going to get into this first episode. But did you know that in the serials is where Superman learned to fly?
Yes, it did.
Or not the serials, the Fleischer cartoons.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Because he basically takes off out of the window. After he says this is a job for Superman, he changes and he takes off and he flies out of the window. And when he goes for the building, he catches the building and he pushes it back up, and then he flies up to the spike coming off the top because it starts going back over the other way, and then in midair he pulls the spike and straightens the building back out. And then as the mad scientist's ray gun is blasting and blasting him, it's knocking him back, but in midair he fights back and projects himself forward in midair.
This is our first look up in the sky. And first superhero cartoon.
It was easier to animate him flying than it was to animate him jumping. Although when he does capture the scientist and rescue Lois, he kind of does a jump and you see a familiar sight from the comics of him in the air, like he jumped and he's coming down. So it's an image you've seen like in Action Comics #1 when he leaps from one place to another, like just the way he's positioned, one leg outstretched and the other one back, like a jump.
So I will say that when this started playing and we were watching it, Solo just started singing the theme song immediately. Like he just had heard it and knew the music without actually having ever really watched the cartoon. And I just... So, what do you think?
Knowing you, he probably heard it in the womb. Just in his brain.
He probably did. Hey, he'll sing the music like to the Superman versus Doomsday movie because it's so distinct. He will call it out and sing. Do you guys? What do you think the budget was for one of these animated shorts?
I'm gonna say, I don't know. I'm gonna say 1940s for one of them. I'm gonna say $2,000.
I don't know. I was thinking maybe like $20,000.
$100,000
per
or I just sent it to you guys.
Oh wow!
Whoa!
Because of the technique, the art, the rotoscoping, like holy cow! But so let's dive into the actual episode that we watched.
I definitely aim too low.
But the thing is, you wouldn't think that much. I mean, you adjust for like the pricing back then and everything. Like, you would never think of it being that expensive. But
yeah, I was thinking it's 20 something grand is like that is a lot of money back then. But $100,000, that's like $1 million production today. $100,000, heck, that's probably like a freaking $25 million production today.
And
I'm going to look up inflation.
We'll get into this later on. But eventually, like before these are done, they use a secondary studio to help with these cartoons. But the first episode is called The Mad Scientist. And other than the voice over and a couple lines of dialogue, there really is not that much sound or like dialogue discussion. But the animation is so beautiful. Like, I wonder if you could like render this image like 4K and how vibrant it would be. Because I don't know if you guys ever watched anything that was like filmed in the 50s in like Technicolor. Like a great example of this is if you go and you watch The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn on Blu-ray, because it was remastered for Blu-ray.
Great example.
The colors are so vibrant and pop so beautifully, just because of the technique they used to color it. So it's just like this is that same thing to me. Of just the colors and where they pop, that if someone sat down and upgraded this. But the one thing about these are all in the public domain. Did you guys know that?
Not specifically, but it makes sense.
Yep.
So, and it's interesting when you watch these and it comes on and talks about Paramount Pictures. You know, Paramount did this, Columbia did the serials and stuff like that. It's just, this is
long before Warner Brothers bought like the film and television rights for all of DC.
No, I don't think that happened until the 80s, mid to late 80s.
Yeah, long before.
because I think they still hadn't bought everything by the 70s for Superman. I don't remember. But, or I think Warner Brothers had the film rights, but they hadn't bought the company. Now, one thing to point out in this episode is Lois's design is completely different in this first episode. It's very dark-haired woman compared to what she'll be in later episodes.
Really? Okay, I'm gonna have to look into that.
But this episode is very quiet. Like I was saying, we get.
You're right.
We get the ominous scientist sitting in his chair with the vulture staring at the clock. I mean, and I'm like watching it right now. Like I don't even need the sound on, like to just watch what's going on and understand.
No, it's gorgeous to watch. I mean, the animation is fantastic. But more than story and dialogue, I mean, the story is pretty simple and plain, straightforward, and very little dialogue, but the music, the way the music is set to the action and the mood of the scene, like when Lois goes to the scientist's place, she's just going to report, and of course she gets herself captured and put in a hostage situation, and the music is ominous. He uses the ray to blow up a bridge and then to blow up to blast a building to cause it to collapse, and so it's ominous. And then the music turns triumphant when Superman shows up, and then when Superman's getting blasted and he goes all the way back down to the ground, the music turns, and then as soon as he's fighting back, and it starts every time he punches the ray, the music becomes more triumphant. Like the score is fantastic.
Superman has always had amazing music. He's never not had amazing music.
It's because he is inspirational and he is triumphant and victorious, and that is all that inspires great music.
And like you said, we see him flying, punching the ray, and it's epic. I love it. And I can just get lost in looking at these images, and but yeah, Lois. When I went back and watched this, Lois was strikingly different, and it even ends with a beautiful. Because even in the next episode, Lois is completely different. Like she changes from the first episode to the second episode, and what do you call it? Yeah. Even the last scene is like they're talking, Perry White and Lois, and Clark kind of gives a nod, breaks the fourth wall, and kind of winks at us, and we're like, oh, we know. But,
like, oh, we know it's Superman. We know Clark Kent is Superman.
This is, I think, something that you can show. Like, yeah, they're older cartoons, but man, they hold up. And they are just beautiful.
To talk to you, but you're doing your
so, but what do you think? What's your final thoughts on this episode, James?
I love the Fleischer cartoons. They were my first introduction to Superman. I know I've seen the Mad Scientist 100,000 times. The Mechanical Monsters and the next one, I know I've seen that a whole bunch of times. The Bulleteers, I remember that one.
I feel like I saw that one first. I just feel like I have more vivid memories of that one than this one. But
so those three in particular, I remember very well. And then, I mean, they're great. The animation is great. The music is great. You know, if you want to show somebody something Superman and you want to go right back to the very beginning, like
This is where you
this 10 minutes, it's short, 10 minutes, you know, it'll keep a child's attention. Adults will appreciate it for how gorgeous it looks, the good music and everything. It's, yeah. I mean, it's one of the best things you can do to show somebody a Superman for the very first time, either that or the 75th anniversary animation.
Yeah, that one's just like, what is Superman? Oh, here you go. That one's just like the quick, like, oh, this is everything Superman you needed to know for all time. But I thoroughly enjoy these. And like I said, I'm going to watch the next episode for our next review. I'm going to watch them with the kids. So, Brian, what is your final thoughts on this episode?
You know, I just love these cartoons so much. You know, when I was a kid, and then I saw Christopher Reeve for the first time in Superman the movie with my Aunt Carol. I wanted more Superman. I needed more Superman, and I demanded it. and I think my mom found the VHS cartoons with some Popeye cartoons and stuff. And I think like James said, I watched the Bullet Men and the big mechanical monsters with the big arm ones. I must have watched those about 1 billion times as a kid. I think these cartoons hold up forever. I think they'll hold up forever just because the animation's so good and it's so fun. It grabs your attention with the music. I'm totally with you guys. Superman has always had such amazing music, you know, from, you know, just such, oh my gosh, it's just, I don't know, it just holds a special place in my heart as a Superman fan. There's just so much nostalgia that you feel when you're watching this, and getting to watch it with a younger generation has to be really special for you guys. And also, just that Superman, the Superman suit and how simple the S is. Love it with the black. I think it looks great. But I think more than anything, you know, sometimes nowadays, comic book movies and cartoons, they tend to take themselves a little bit too serious. And they try to go for a little bit of a dark tone sometimes and get a little too serious. And sometimes I just like to watch something that doesn't take itself too serious and has that fun and that, like, great music, great nostalgia, fun. And when you're watching these cartoons, you know, Lois Lane just flies a plane and she just lands it right next to the mad scientist's headquarters. And you just see Superman just battling just crazy things. And sometimes you just need that fun. Sometimes you just need that simpleness, you know, other than, why is Superman sad? You know, why is Superman fighting Batman? What's going on here? Or is he going to end up with Lois? I don't even know. You know, sometimes you just want to watch Superman kicking butt, and that's why these are great.
All right. That sounds pretty good to me.
Look up in the sky.
Look up in the sky.
Look at the sky.